Hey everyone, I think we are going live. I think we're live right now. Hey all, my name's Angela Williams. I am a life coach for women, and today I want to start by really asking you just a question. Do you talk to yourself? And if so, why and how? Okay, so I really want to talk about this. I put a poll up earlier and I asked people, when you talk to yourself, right? Because we do it every day, whether we're kind of talking ourselves through steps of things or just kind of this mental commentary in our minds. But I asked earlier, I asked people, how's that discussion like with yourself? What's that conversation like with yourself? And, there were a ton of different answers. It was kind of like, a mixture of, I'm my own hype person, and or maybe it's I'm telling myself get my shit together, or it's maybe it's a little more harsh, a little more critical. So I'd love to know in the comments. So it was like A, B, C, D. So A was again, A was I'm my own hype person. B was I am um, telling myself I gotta get my shit together, right? C was I am a little more harsh or critical, and D was fill in the blank. So I'd love to know where you are. Put a letter in the comments and share where you're kind of falling on that. And I'd love to know a little bit more about that too, if you feel like sharing of like where does that come from, right? Because I think that we all, it doesn't matter how old you are, who you are, I think we all have this commentary inside our head, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. And if it's not, and especially if it's not more than, more days than not, right? Like if it's not good, it's not positive, it's not helpful to you, there's some stuff that we can do to tweak that, right? Like it's so important to catch that. And also if you're aware of it, right, this is your sign of here's ways that we can move forward and work on this, okay? And actually, once I had a conversation with a client, it was an 80-year-old woman, and she came to me and she's like, oh, I'm really sad, like I have all these regrets, and I feel like I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and didn't really, act the way that I wanted to. And I said, oh yeah, that's understandable. Of course, like we all have our own stuff. We all make a lot of mistakes. And, we can be really critical on ourselves, and that makes it worse, right? When we're beating ourselves on top of making a mistake, which is human, which is part of life. And, I asked her, I said, well, okay, well, like, understandable, but how are you speaking to yourself? Like, when you're thinking about those memories or those thoughts, and when you're looking backward, or even when you're in the present, like, how are you speaking to yourself about that? And, she said, she kind of laughed. She was like, I never thought about that, but also it's not good, right? She kind of said, it's not really nice. And I said, okay, again, understandable, right? We get into this where we kind of get into our own head and we kind of have this maybe negative self-talk. And I asked her, I said, how do you feel about, I kind of said, no wonder you're sad and upset, but and frustrated, but how about trying speaking positivity to yourself every single day? And how do you speak kindly, right? Like, how do you speak those kind words? It's stuff like, hey, oops, we made a boo-boo, but we're going to learn from that and we're going to grow from that. And, oh, okay, right? And it can be like, hey, we have to take a step back and look and say, oh, you've been trying really hard at A, B, and C thing. Like you're making progress, you're making baby steps, right? It's acknowledging the little things, right? It's being thankful for your surroundings. It's being thankful for the things that you're doing, the efforts that you're taking. So, because I told her, here's the thing, right? We're already doing it. We're already talking to ourselves, and we are the ones that are in our minds 24/7. There's nobody else that's in there 24/7. Like, we need to be the ones to be the leader in that positive thought and conversation. Otherwise, you're going to get to be 80 and you're going to not love your life. You're going to have regrets and be miserable because we make the mistakes, which is normal, but then we go ahead and punish ourselves on top of that. Think about the way we get to choose that interaction, right? So think about the way someone is, kind of, maybe it's a happy person, maybe it's a healthy person, right? Think about the way they're talking to themselves. Oh, okay, no worries, I'll do better next time. Or even the way you would talk to your best friend or someone that you really care about. You'd say, oh, no worries, no problem, like we'll figure it out. Or, oh, that's okay, or I forgive you, right? How often are you saying those words to yourself? And then when you think about, the other hand, somebody who's really critical and maybe having a lot of negative self-talk. I know for me, it's not really, I'm not saying to myself like, oh, you know, way to go, a-hole, or anything like that. But I know there's times for me when I'm like really critical and like nitpicking. I don't know, raise your hand if you can relate, if you're like maybe perfectionism, if you got that going on like I do or did. It's a battle, right? Continue to making these decisions. But it's like, you have a choice, right? Like, can I sit here and spend all my time nitpicking and saying like, oh, well, you did this, but you could have done X, Y, and Z thing that would have made it better, or you could have said X, Y, and Z thing that would have been better. Like, who has time for that? Like, you have to make that choice, right? And again, I think there's also, I want to make a distinction that, there are some very intense things that happen in our lives that we really need to sort out and get support for, maybe more in a therapy realm. But when we're talking in the space of coaching, which is what I do and how I help people, it's really looking at how to take a look at what's going on presently. How can we kind of get rid of some of those negative thoughts and behavior patterns, right? And how can we succeed and grow and expand, right? The more that we're able to get rid of the yuck, the bad patterns and negative self-talk, the more that we can grow, expand, and make room for that positivity, and that fuels your growth, right? That's what we're talking about in the coaching space. And I want to make that distinction because I think, some people might watch this and say, oh, well, that person really has some serious stuff. And so it's really hard for them to get out of that negative self-talk. Yes, understandable. Therapist, right? Coach, like I understand the difference. But again, there is a way, if you are recognizing that, there is a way to support yourself in that. And I think, too, a lot of times when I'm speaking to folks, it's not really in the negative talk sense that you may think, but it is where that perfectionism shows up. It is where that almost good enough shows up. It is where that, but I'm not good enough, right? Or where it could always be better, or, ooh, judgy, right? The judgmental pieces, right? So all of that can come in your self-talk. And let me just say too, like it takes awareness and being intentional to one, notice something that you want to work on, right? So we're noticing that right now, right? When we're taking that poll, we're identifying and thinking about how many days am I speaking life and happiness and celebrating, right? So how often am I celebrating the things that I've done? How often am I bragging? I don't like that word because I think like we can talk about the things that we've done in a way that's totally fine and healthy, and we need to do it. But I think sometimes that gets convoluted with maybe people that are cocky or like shoving it down our throats. But anyways, I want you to celebrate those things, right? So if you're noticing that the tone of your conversations with yourself, the tone of your the dialogue with yourself internally isn't where you're hyping yourself up most of the time or being your own best friend, like that's something we can definitely take a look at and work on. So it takes that awareness and that intentionality to sit and know, like, hey, this is an issue for me, right? And that can contribute, right, to self-doubt. Like, think about the pattern of how that can lead you down a place where it's just not great to be with yourself, right? Where it's not enjoyable, and you have your brain, you're here 24/7. So why don't you choose, right? We can choose to make that a good place to be. So it takes that awareness, it takes that being intentional to notice that you have something that negative self-talk that you want to tweak a little bit. But I think it takes a real bravery to show up and do something about it. So that's where, we can make these tweaks. We can be more aware. We can make these tweaks. We can practice this loving conversation to ourselves every day. So what I want you to do is, one, just kind of take the rest of this week, and just listen and notice to what kind of thoughts you're having, what kind of conversation that you're having with yourself. So I want you to do that, be aware and notice, and also, excuse me, and also, sometimes we're not aware because we're literally going from thing to thing to thing to thing, so we don't sit and stop and like notice what is going on in here. So slow it down, really notice the conversations, the words that are said, and I want you to notice that and then practice like hyping yourself up. Be option A. And like when you catch yourself, because right, we have to catch and we have to rewire our brains a little bit. So when we catch ourselves, we kind of say, oh, I just said something negative to myself. This is not helpful. Is this helpful? Is this useful? That's another good question to ask yourself, right? Probably not. And then we can practice inserting those positive thoughts, feelings, right? Like those statements, those celebrations, those pieces of gratitude for ourselves and the things that we're doing. I have to do that a lot. I have to check myself. I have to say, oh, wow, you're building a business from the bottom up. It's like, I've already built a business that's successful, but that's a whole different ballgame because I already have all these built-in systems that were helping me. But now I have to build it from the bottom up, and it's like I get frustrated sometimes, but I'm like, you know what? This is part of the process. And look at all the gains. Look at all the growth, personal and business-wise, right? So it's really important that we reframe and put things in perspective, and we really pay attention to what's going on up here and give ourselves like that love and that fair shot, right? That support, that nurturing that we need to continue to build on our success. And I work with women who, and myself too, like always are wanting to take that step up, to expand your mind, to expand your growth for that self-development, because we know, right, we're working toward that actualization where we are at top of our pyramid, our Maslow's hierarchy. Does anyone know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? But it kind of, prioritizes our needs as humans, and like at the bottom, we're at, safety and security, and then we go all the way up to the top of that actualization where you are really, like, I think they use the examples of like Gandhi or, people who are really like so far into their to their mission, their movements in life, their self-development, that they are kind of at the top because they put so much time and energy. So anyways, I know that, the women I work with are really, the goals are to just go up and up and up, because when you go up in those levels, when you invest in yourself, when you work on some of these things, just doing some little tweaks, I mean, that could have so many ripple effects in your life. More money, better jobs, better relationships, better sex even. I can go into a whole thing about that, which I will in the group actually. So join us in the Women Building a Bigger, Braver Life, because I think that's even, it touches all of it, right? When we can make some tweaks, when we can get rid of some negative habits or behaviors, especially the way we see ourselves or talk to ourselves, like that's step one, okay? Telling ourselves we can do it. We can write that book that we're scared to write. We can put ourselves out there and succeed. We can ask for that promotion. We can apply to a different job. We can leave this toxic job and go to another one, right? These are all the things we have to speak that into ourselves, because sometimes we get held back. And another thing too is I think that, and what's happened for me, I'm like in a pattern, like a loop throughout my life, and that's one of the reasons I designed the Braver Life coaching program, is because every time I have this desire and this goal to reach, right? Like I'm like, I want this, this is what I want for my life, right? I started with my vision, I say what I want out of my life, I decide, and then I want to go after it, and then life gets in the way. How many people does life get in the way of your goals and dreams, and then you're like, you look up and you're like, holy crap, it's already been 3 years? Or holy crap, it's already been multiple months, multiple days, whatever. And you're like, oh, I've sacrificed all of this time being miserable because I got off my path of life, right? My path, my goals. So my whole thing was, it's like I've had multiple situations where I've been on this path. I'm like, okay, here's where I'm going. I know what I want. Also figuring that out, tinkering with that along the way, right? But like, and then it's like, oh, shiny object, relationship. How many people have been diverted from your goals by a relationship? Put it in the comments. So it's like relationship or job that's going to make me some immediate money, or side hustle, whatever that is. I've been kind of sidetracked, if you will. And then I wake up one day and I go, what the heck's going on? What did I just do to myself? I'm miserable, or I'm sad, or I'm like eating too much food. I'm like, wait a second, these are all symptoms that something's wrong. How many people have you woken up and said, uh-oh, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem, right? That's why I designed this coaching program, because I know that I had to go through these patterns, right? And then snap up awake and then get back on my path. But that takes a lot of courage. That takes bravery. That takes discipline. That takes awareness. So, I mean, I was in such a serious relationship, And I reminded myself one day, I was like, wait a second, if you say yes to this, if you continue to say yes to this relationship, you're going to give up a lot of the things that you want to do. I won't go into the whole details, but it's like you'd be giving this up. You'd be giving up the when, the where, the how, the why, really, of what I want to do with my life to be able to help other people. So that sucked. I was so sad. I had to break that off because that was not part of my plan and my journey. That was a kind of a derailed moment, which is fine, right? We all do that. But that's hard. Hard to really leave a relationship sometimes. Hard to even be aware of what's going on. Hard to then, what do? I have to pick up the pieces of this relationship. I have to get back on my goals, right? Like all these different things. And it's like, yeah, we don't want to give up what we want to do with our life, especially if you're called, if you have a vision. Thank you, Lauren, for saying that. If you're called, if you have a vision, like you know where you're going, ultimately, even if you don't know the details. And we don't have time to be sidetracked. But we do, we're humans, right? Like we get shiny object syndrome. And then we find it difficult, right? We get attached to people or things happen. And then we have to realize, okay, wake up, readjust, realign, right? And that's really what my Braver coaching program is all about. It's you've woken up and you say, Houston, we have a problem. I have to get back right. I have to reestablish this trust in myself that maybe I lost because I'm in this crappy relationship, or I've spent all my money on stuff, or whatever it is, coping and then getting lost. Sorry, I'm like super dry. Because that's what happens. We get lost, we get distracted, that's okay. So just to recap, I want you all today to notice how you're talking to yourself. Notice those conversations. I want you to practice speaking that love into your life. And if you need more support, which I know I did like all the times I needed to refresh my life and refocus, that's what this coaching program is for. It's to rebuild the trust in yourself. It's to tap into that inner knowing that you know the right thing. You don't have to ask other people, but we need someone to help shine the light and say, hey, remember your knowledge and your knowing. Like that's what coaching does, right? And it helps you to rebuild that confidence to make those hard decisions sometimes that we have to make. It helps us to get the confidence to put our feet, in our steps, in our path again, right? So if you are interested, if you are waking up and saying, oh, Houston, we have a problem, or I'm realizing I'm talking to myself in a way that is not helpful, what's that about? I have goals, I'm trying to get there, right? This is the program. Right now I've got the 90-day coaching program for women. It's all about coming back to your bigger, braver life. It's coming back to that path. It's building that path for you if you're still trying to figure it out, right? We will figure that out together. So the next steps for you, if you want to do this, which I think you should, I mean, who wouldn't want this support, right? We all need the support. We need that accountability and the strength and the lessons, right? We all could benefit from that, right? So if you are, please send me a message. I will also put a link to the discovery call where we will sit down and discover the dreams, if this program's helpful for you, if it's a good fit, because sometimes it's not, and that's okay too, and I will let you know what else you can do instead. But we'll go ahead and talk through that quick brief conversation just to make sure that you feel good about it, you have questions answered, and you know what you're looking for, right? And also, if you don't, we'll figure that out too. But I hope this was so helpful for you all. Have a wonderful day and be well.